Does have significance, Darren, and that's because even though they are working at a military installation, it's in the nation's capital, which is already at a higher security footing than most other U.S. cities. That said, it's not the kind of place where you expect to hear gunfire, especially when you're coming into work. Even though the Washington Navy Yard is an active military installation where it handles all of the commissioning and outfitting of U.S. naval vessels around the world. It basically deals with all the paperwork and all of the organization that goes with that work. You have to basically be a military police officer or a contract security guard in order to have a weapon on base. Even if you're active duty military, you have to have a good reason and usually some sort of waiver from the commanding officer in order to have a firearm on the property, and that's pretty typical across U.S. military installations. Now, what else also is significant is that this installation, the Washington Navy Yard, sits right next to businesses, right next to homes, near schools, near recreation facilities. It's part of a neighborhood. It is not set apart with acres of land or hectares of land separating it from population centers, and that is pretty much the layout of Washington, D.C. Federal agencies, military installations are right next to homes, businesses, schools, and other facilities. They're not separated by anything more than just the streets that separate one facility from another. So for the president to make this comment is really to acknowledge the reality of the national capital, which is the hub of federal government activity, not just having it secreted somewhere out in the wilderness.
Roslyn, you were saying earlier that the media response to all of this has been quite interesting because social media picked up this story pretty early.
That's right. Almost from the moment that the first gunshots were heard, people started tweeting, people started going on Facebook, people started texting loved ones and nearby residents, as well as getting in touch with law enforcement to let them know that something was going on. Of course, the downside of social media is that it's very easy for rumors to take off and for people to simply take things that they read as the actual truth, and then things take on a life of their own, and then it's up to authorities to try to beat all of these misconceptions and rumors back. But that said, it has shown itself today at least to be a very, very useful way for law enforcement, for government officials to speak to as many people as possible. We've seen now the video of the mayor of Washington, Vincent Gray, talking about the need for people to stay where they are, don't come to the neighborhood near the Washington Navy Yard if they don't have to. But even before he appeared before television cameras to say that, he said so on Twitter. People should stay where they are and try to stay out of harm's way. This is really one of those dynamics that really does inform the security posture here in Washington, because people have come to count on it as much as they do official announcements you might see on TV or hear on the radio.
Rosalind, this is a pretty big incident in Washington, D.C., a huge security incident as they still hunt for these two gunmen. What sort of systems, local and federal, come into force when they have incidents like this, big security incidents like this?
Well, basically what you saw after September 11th was the removal of what they call silos, each agency having its own radio frequency, each agency having its own radio systems, each agency having its own protocols for responding to an emergency. What you saw was essentially a merging of all of these factors so that when you do have a massive incident such as this, that people can respond much more quickly. People rehearse emergency drills on a more frequent basis. It's not unusual to get an alert a few days before they do these sorts of emergency drills involving not just law enforcement, but local hospitals and fire departments as well as the military, so that they can be prepared when something of this sort happens. This is not an everyday occurrence. And so when you see all of these police cruisers, all of these fire trucks, all of these helicopters, and perhaps most significant, all of these personnel responding armed and ready to go in, this is years of preparation, hundreds of millions of dollars spent in order to train people to be ready to respond to this sort of incident. It's something that they don't like to train for, especially when people are killed, but they know that this is something that they have to prepare for nonetheless.
All right, Rosalind Jordan there in Washington, D.C. Rosalind, thank you. So let's just recap quickly our top stories here on Al Jazeera. As you've been hearing, 3 gunmen are thought to be involved in a shooting which has left at least 4 people dead at that naval complex in Washington, D.C. 2 of those gunmen are believed to be still at large. The U.S. president has condemned what he described as a cowardly attack.